Ladies and gentlemen, seekers of light and secret knowledge wherever you may be, you are listening to Points of Light Radio, the podcast dedicated to taking you past the apron and behind the closed doors of lodges everywhere. And here is your host, Stan Miller.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Shalom, assalamu alaikum, adnastana. It's a pleasure to be back with you here on Points of Light Radio. And as I promised earlier this year that we would be doing more investigative style segments, we are going to be continuing that journey by trying to answer a question I posed in my inaugural segment of Points of Light Radio. And that is, why do some people outside fraternalism have an issue with the secretive nature of some of these fraternal orders, right? Why do organizations such as Odd Fellowship, Freemasonry, Orangism, and so on, right? Why do they hide so many secrets in their rituals and in their degrees, right? Is it wrong, right? Either ethically or morally to do that? Well, to quote President Kennedy, the late John F. Kennedy, he said, and I quote, "The word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we as a people are inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings." Now, what is a secret society? And you've heard me ask this year before, and I'll give you a quick recap on the definitions. First of all, as you've heard me say here before, definitions generally rely on the degree to which the organization insists on secrecy and might have involved the retention and transmission of secret knowledge, the denial of membership or knowledge of the group. Okay, there's also the creation of personal bonds between members of the organization and the use of secret rites and rituals which solidify members of the group, right? Many secret societies have carefully graded and progressed teachings. The teachings are available only to selected individuals. Teachings lead to hidden and unique truths, right? And the truths bring personal benefits beyond the reach of even an understanding of the uninitiated, right? Well, first of all, and you've heard me say this on previous segments of Points of Light Radio, secret societies, and the passage I will add here of secret knowledge has been going on for much longer than we think, right? I will warn you that I will warn our friends in the faith community that I will be using scriptural references, okay, as part of this segment. If that offends you, you can tune out now, or as I've said before, right, leave your comments in the detail section of this particular segment, right? I'm going to be interviewing some different guests here. I'm going to be giving you doing some quick references with some guests here on Points of Light Radio, and I'll be offering some personal experience and observations from the past year, and also my personal experience in fraternalism, right? So I'm really looking forward to bringing you this segment. We've got a lot of ground to cover here, so let's move forward. But as you've often heard me say here, I always ask you this: are you still thirsty for knowledge? Are you still searching for the light? Well, you just trim your lamp and follow me. I'm going to begin this particular session with a Bible reading. Okay, Matthew and the 13th chapter, beginning at verse 3. Now he's speaking to a crowd of people, and this is called the parable of the sower, basically. And he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, the sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places, where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But others fell into good ground, and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, and some 30-fold. He who hath ears to hear, let him hear. And the disciples came and said unto him, Why speakest thou unto them in parables? And this is the key verse I want you to remember. And he answered and said unto them, Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not. So remember that, because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. Okay? So, let me ask you, what does that sound like? Right? This is what you have, I believe, brothers and sisters. Jesus is passing along some secret knowledge to his disciples. He goes on from verse 12 and beyond to explain that parable to them. Now, he gave that parable an exhortation to a whole crowd of followers. However, he took his 12 disciples aside, and when they asked him, he expounded on that parable. He showed them its deeper meaning, right? I don't like to equate the two, but is he trying to make these good men better, to put it in terms of one well-known fraternal order? Was he trying to make these good men better, these 12 good men better? And this is only one example of many in the Gospels where he does this very thing. He gives the crowd a parable or an exhortation, but he takes his disciples aside for further explanation and exhortation, right? Now, if Jesus can do this to his disciples, right, what's wrong with lodges doing it with their members? Now, here to discuss the Masonic degrees, 3 craft degrees, is my friend, and you may recall him from a previous segment of Points of Light Radio, David Cousteau. You may recall him from, like I said, a previous segment of Points of Light Radio, where he talked about some exciting work and rebuilding that he was doing on his lodge in Sterling, Colorado. So let's talk about the degree work. Now, I pulled this right off of a Grand Lodge website from, I believe it was Ohio, but they talk about the entered apprentice degree, and they talk about the fact that it poses an introduction to the Masonic order in which candidates learn about the ritual symbolisms and beliefs of Freemasonry, among other things. Now, what was your personal observation? I know with most of the, shall we say, the more esoteric orders, both Freemasonry and others that have, a degree system, I believe, wouldn't you agree that basically entered apprentice, like many of them, your first degree is to just give you, and they call it working tools in Freemasonry, I believe, but also just to basically, and welcome to the lodge type thing, or would you say it goes even beyond that?
Yeah, I would say the entered apprentice degree in Freemasonry kind of lays the ground floor of kind of what kind of men are in the organization.
Okay.
And it kind of lays the ground floor of what the organization as a 30,000-foot view is about.
Okay.
So, it kind of is a really introductory, just this is the kind of men that are in the group, and this is the kind of man we expect you to be going forward, now initiated as a first degree Mason. So that's what I think the interdependence degree is really, if you wanted to look at it from that point of view, that's what I think it's more like.
Well, now, the fellowcraft, members of the fellowcraft degree pursue a more advanced search for the understanding in philosophy, intellectual enlightenment, and wisdom. The degree represents the member reaching manhood. Now, what else would you have to add to that, among other things it says that? But
Yeah, I think in the first degree, they kind of introduce you to some of the symbolism. It's in part of the lectures at the very end, in some of the symbolism. But in the second degree, that is where you're kind of introduced, in my opinion, to more of the esoteric things happening in Freemasonry. That's kind of your first introduction.
a little more knowledge based.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a little more, yeah. So it's a lot more esoteric, a ton more than the first degree. So yeah, that's what I would think in Freemasonry that would kind of be kicked into there. Is not to say there's not things, of course, in the first degree that are esoteric. You could make them esoteric, but
Yeah.
the second degree, it's easy to say this is a very esoteric degree. You're taught a lot of principles. You're taught a lot about symbolism. You're taught a lot about um, all of those things. Yeah, the symbolism.
Now, the Master Mason, like in many organizations that you see out there, and the ones that I belong to, like, this is what makes you a Mason, right? And that's usually what it is with most of them. But the third degree represents maturity with advanced wisdom and knowledge. Master Masons are taught about virtue and morality, along with the duties and tools of a Master Mason. So, could you even expand on that? Could you give us the, shall we say, what your view on it is, shall we say, the Master Mason?
Yeah. I view the Master Mason degree as, of course, there's so much in it. It's kind of,
I understand that. It's very involved.
But yeah, it's very, I think when I did my Master Mason degree, I think we started at 7:00 and we got done almost at midnight.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah.
And it's something that I do say part of that these degrees, the reason they can't give them to you all in one day, or in things like that, why they can't rush through them, or they need to be done in certain places, is you need time and you need space. You do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you gotta let all the information kind of settle before you go to the next degree, or it's just, especially something like going from fellowcraft to master degree, it's just going to be so much information. You're just going to be.
But even the ceremonies themselves, you're talking about a team that has to be brought together. And like I said, the ceremonies themselves take time and space.
They do.
A lot of people don't understand that are looking from outside of these orders in, are saying, well, I mean, why can't you explain it to me? Well, I can't explain something that goes on in that amount of time all at once to someone who's never been part of it before.
Yeah.
You never understand it anyway. The only way to understand it is to experience it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about hours of information and hours of ritual, floor work and everything, it's a lot.
But your personal view is that you really, do you understand now why that truly makes you a Mason, that third degree?
Yeah. So what I think is that, not to go into too much detail, but in my opinion, the master's degree is more about really not dying. That's not a bad word, but not a good word to use. But
dying to self, maybe.
Yeah, and keeping your promises, keeping your oath, saying, I've made this obligation, and I'm willing to be the best person that I can be, even when the rest of the world might want me to be something different. I'm not going to be that different. I'm going to keep to my promises and oaths that I made to be a good man and to be a good brother to other Masons. So that, in my opinion, is what the master's degree is about. Of course, there's about 1,000 other things also that it's about, but to me, that's kind of the whole storyline, is that I'm going to keep my promises no matter what, to be the good man that I've been now obligated to be, to humankind, and to my Masonic brothers and their families. So, for instance, there's a phrase. This would be a good phrase to kind of understand what a Master Mason and kind of what a good big view of it would be. And that is, someone might say, what induced you to become a Master Mason? And every state's going to be a little bit different on their wording. And I just moved to Colorado, so my wording on the Colorado one's maybe a little different than what it was in Oklahoma. But it's basically so that I can work and travel as a Master Mason and make master's wages, so that I might better myself and my family, and basically give unto the brothers, widows, and orphans, so they might have something as well too. So it really is about doing good for your community and others in the world, but especially the brothers in your lodge and their families.
You may recall this gentleman from a previous segment of Points of Light Radio, where he was my guest and talking about the Free Gardeners and his plans to bring the Free Gardeners to his hometown. And here he is discussing the degrees. His name is Nathaniel Clayton.
Actually, one of the things that's beautiful about free gardening is that the degree systems are built around the Bible. So each degree it comes straight from the Bible, what you're being taught. Mm-hmm. But also you have then the tools. So if you're in the craft, for instance, the tools are very important.
I understand that, yeah.
And when it comes to free gardening, the tools that we use for our garden are very, very important. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, there's things that we don't talk about in the craft because it's not doesn't really show up, that we talk about in free gardening. For instance, we talk about King Solomon's temple and the third degree and free gardening. And something that never occurred to me is that King Solomon was a gardener. That just totally, I don't know how I missed that. It's right there in scripture. And it's part of the degree work. And it's something beautiful when you're taking the tools of the craft and you have the tools of free gardening to think, oh, wow, this is something that I can think differently about King Solomon's temple. So for me, that went together really, really beautifully.
Now, here to introduce you to some of the degree work of the Knights of Pythias is my old friend, Dylan John Callahan. He's the Chancellor. You may recall him from March 6th of last year. He's the Chancellor Commander of the Knights of Pythias, Damascus Lodge number 455 in Emporia, Kansas. Right? Now, he's going to talk about the degree work of the Knights of Pythias. So let's talk about some of these degrees. First of all, what do you feel that the overall message is of, shall we say, the first degree, which is the page degree? What do you think that is?
Right. I don't think it's any kind of secret that the rank work structure is following closely with our cardinal principles of friendship, charity, and benevolence. So the first one of those, friendship, you'll find that in the rank of page. And there are other related concepts.
Yeah. Welcome to the lodge type thing. You're issued the basic working knowledge for the lodge. Would you agree? I've been through it myself. So in the interest of full disclosure as of you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It is your initial orientation into what to be expecting from the entire order. And we'll talk about the others as well, but they definitely build on top of each other. So it starts with that baseline of friendship, and then other concepts like you mentioned, the welcoming and the story of Damon and Pythias, etc.
And second degree, which is your Esquire degree. Now, what do you feel the Esquire degree, what is the overall message of it without going into the rituals and so on? What would you?
Right. So I think any Knight of Pythias that you talk to will definitely say that's the rank work that did the most impact on them, because it's a very personal way of conveying the idea of charity, and not in the sense of giving away money, but in the sense of the charity of your mind and of your heart towards other people.
Charity is more than money, yes.
You're right. There's a famous quote about money is mere mockery when the nobler gift is withheld. So in that, the idea is you have a charitable attitude towards others. You always put the best construction on their thoughts and their actions, and you don't think the worst of people. And of course, as you know, there's a lot more that goes into that concept, and also some others that are discussed there. But I think that's the main gist of the rank of Esquire.
Yes, because charity can be your time. I remember, like, there's that parable of, or that story of Jesus when people tried to bring their kids to him, and his disciples went, "Get away! He's busy." And no, bring him in,
right.
type thing. And I think that's really, that is, charity can be many things. What about the Knight degree? Now, understand, now that is what truly makes you a Knight of Pythias. Well, what would you say the overall message is for that?
And as you know, there's a long form and a short form. So when you take the long form, the message is the same, but it's just told in a slightly modified way. So following with friendship, charity, and benevolence, you do learn benevolence, which is goodwill towards your brothers and towards your community. So there's that inner, and the inner really must come first, not only among inside the order, but inside yourself. It's not so much the concept of loving yourself or having goodwill for yourself, but having inside of you the ability and the confidence to know you can rely on your brothers, you can rely on yourself, and therefore you can be there for your brothers. And then they've taken the Knight rank. They also have that inner confidence that will be able to brook anything together and help each other out in expressing that goodwill. And I think benevolence is really what most people would refer to as charity. That's where you're seeing somebody, you see a need and you fill it, or you see something that could be better and you improve it. And that could be in the community, in the order, or yourself.
I really appreciate this. Now, here to discuss the degrees of odd fellowship is my new friend, Joe Benton. He is an odd fellow, and he's also a fellow podcaster. You're here to discuss the degrees themselves.
Yes, independent order of odd fellows, just so you know.
Yes. So the initiatory degree. Now, if I remember correctly, it's really just introducing you to the lodge itself.
You do get an introduction to the lodge and some things about if you're going to be visiting another lodge, what you do. And, it kind of covers some of those things in terms of, like, what are you doing being an odd fellow? You're going to be doing certain things and you're going to be helping people because that's our motto, So that is covered it in there. And
grips the passwords, if I remember correctly, or pass on to you.
Yeah, you get introduced to the whole thing about passwords and how to use them, when to use them, that sort of thing. Yes.
Now the friendship degree, which falls under pink degree, I've heard it called. What exactly would you say the central message with that is?
Well, whenever you say the pink degree, I think that you're referring to the fact that rather than a white collar,
okay,
you would get so with the initiatory degree, when you're done, you get the most basic collar, which is white, and then when you go and do some of the other degrees, you end up with a collar that has a different color, different trim. Mm-hmm. So whenever you do your degree of friendship, you end up with a pink collar.
And what's the central message, though, of the friendship degree? What would you say it's introducing you to the friendship of the lodge, or?
Well, as I don't think this is anything that's really, shocking to people to know and understand. But most of the work that is done in Oddfellows, as a matter of fact, this is like something that is quoted in some of the degree work, that the Holy Bible is the source of all wisdom. And so it should not really be a big surprise, because if you go on the internet, I'm actually looking at this right now. If you look at the catalog of for Oddfellows regalia,
Mhm.
you'll see a costume for King Saul. So
Okay.
King Saul is a character in, one of the degrees,
Yes.
and it has to do with uh, you know, uh, Jonathan and David. So it talks about, Jonathan, David, and their friendship. So this
Oh,
is something that
intense.
you don't even have to have the degree work to find this information.
Mhm.
So you got King Saul and the story about Jonathan and David. So it talks about their friendship and the covenant of friendship.
Yes.
So that is the lesson,
Mhm.
because it kind of holds up their friendship as a model of what friendship can be about.
And it was. I mean, Jonathan almost took a spear from his father for David. That's,
Mhm.
tantamount to taking a bullet for a friend today. So yeah, that's, what I mean? Yeah, I can
Yeah,
understand that.
yeah. It's the kind of friendship that, if you and I were best friends, and if I had kids and you have kids, and we would be the kind of friends that if anything happened to me, I know that I could trust you to make sure that my kids are taken care of, and vice versa. So, and I actually have a best friend who is like that. It's like he is the goddaughter of my daughter, and they don't have kids. He and his wife don't have kids, but we have that kind of friendship where if anything were to happen to me and my wife, then he would take care of my child.
And he'd take a bullet for you.
Oh, sure.
It came down. Yeah, yeah.
And as as Marines and how veterans often are, we take bullets for each other. Not that that's a good sign of doing a good job as a combat troop, but still, it's like,
Yeah.
if it came down to it, if somebody had to throw themselves on a grenade, someone will do it. Whoever's closest, that's the thing. So yes, we protect each other, we guard for each other. We make sure that as in this degree, it talked about how it is that there is a covenant of friendship that we will protect our each other's families.
Now, the brotherly love degree,
Hmm.
um, what would you say the central message? Of course, obviously, brotherly love comes into it, but what would you say some other messages might be from that?
Well, if you go and you look at the costumes here, and I'm just trying to like identify, specifically which of the degrees that it mentions, but it talks about um, the road to Jericho, and there's murals, for these degrees, and it talks about the Good Samaritan. So there's a costume for a Good Samaritan. There's a costume for a Levite. There's a costume for, the robbers because of the story of the Good Samaritan.
So,
So
helping the stranger.
yes, exactly, exactly. So treating, people who are strangers as, a with a brotherly responsibility.
Yes, of course.
So that's something that's just kind of uncommon in the world. And so, as an odd fellow, when you take this degree, you understand that this is what you are joining into, a brotherhood that loves others, each other. We care for each other.
But also the world outside the lodge as well.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's like you're the kind of person that would help a stranger. So this is the lesson that you're given to emulate.
Now, the truth degree,
Hmm.
that's an interesting one. What would you say the central message around that truth degree, or shall we say third degree, is?
Well, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, which is how it refers to the Bible as the source of our wisdom. So when we hold a lodge meeting, we're required to have a Bible open,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a chaplain and we have opening and closing prayers. It's just that this is the thing that is expected of us to revere what the Bible teaches.
Okay.
And it's not like you actually have to be a Christian necessarily to, follow these sorts of things, like the kind of friendship talked about in the Bible and the kind of brotherly love that's talked about in the Bible and wisdom itself. It's not something that's purely Christian. And some people are a little, taken, I don't want to say they take offense necessarily, but there's nothing pluralistic about Christianity. So it kind of, does ruffle a few feathers.
Mm-hmm.
But, Oddfellows sticks to the idea that, it doesn't, we don't have to discuss our particular
Faith, yeah.
label of our faith. Yeah, we just have to believe in a, supreme being and that sort of thing. So, if you are, I think, somebody who is going to be taking the third degree, you kind of have reached a point where you understand and embrace that the Bible is a representation of the wisdom that Oddfellows aspire to hold.
How do you feel, brothers and sisters? Did we at least, I want to believe that we at least went partway to answering the question about secrecy or the need for it or what necessitates it. You've seen several different fraternal bodies represented there. And you've also seen some scriptural references. But let's unpack very quickly what we've covered here. So, why do these fraternal orders keep these secrets? Well, as you've heard me ask here before, do you let folks from outside your family circle, do you let them in on your family secrets? The answer is probably, there are people that are open books, but no, the answer is probably no. And one of the many reasons for that is, as the old saying goes, with for instance, inside jokes that some families have, you had to be there to understand why, they're telling that joke or that saying, right? Secondary, I believe that, I don't like to equate the two, but one of the goals of salespeople is to keep you hungry for more, right? You don't tell the customer everything there is to know at once, okay? You keep them hungry. You keep them asking more questions, looking for more, right? And, I think the one important thing is with fraternalism is these degrees and this esoteric knowledge, it covers a lot of ground, right? So why do they have graduated degrees, where a person in, shall we say, in the second degree of one of these fraternal orders will know more than the person in the first? There's a lot of ground there to cover. And you can't cover all of that in one second session or degree, okay? That's why you can look at these degrees as graduated learning sessions, right? And you've also heard members of different fraternal orders talk about the fact that here on Points of Light Radio in the past, you've heard them talk about that they don't like degree rallies. They like to take the time to properly teach you. You don't want to give people too much information too fast, right? There's also a need for time and space when it comes to these degrees, okay? If, prime example, Mr. Cousteau talked about the fact that his Master Mason's degree took from 7 o'clock till almost midnight. Well, there's a reason for that. It's a very elaborate degree, okay? You can't cover, so think about that. That was just his Master Mason's degree. Think of all the time it took to give him those, his entered apprentice and his fellow craft degree. There just wouldn't be time even in one day to cover all of that, right? You know, prime example of the time and space. If you recall the Sons of Malta degrees you saw here in a previous segment of Points of Light Radio, and I'll put those pictures up over there. Yeah, I mean, you can see how elaborate those degrees were. And you can just imagine how time consuming and how much space was needed to do them. And those pictures still make me laugh. Okay. I'll give you a personal experience. I joined the Orange Order in the fall of 2005, and I really wanted to obtain my Royal Arch Purple degree because I knew even before I joined the Orange Order, I had learned about the Royal Black Preceptory, and to get into the Royal Black Preceptory, you had to be a Purple Arch Orangeman. So I really wanted to be raised to the Royal Arch Purple degree, right? I really wanted to get that done. But my more established brethren in my lodge just told me to slow down a little bit, learn about the previous 2 degrees I'd received, right? And they also explained that you needed a lot more space than we had in our home lodge to do that. Well, I'm glad I waited. I believe it was almost into the fall of 2006 to get my Royal Arch Purple degree. And they were right. You did need time and you did need space to conduct the degree properly. And you also needed a good degree team. And I will say this. I was raised to the Royal Arch Purple degree at the House of Orange in Toronto, along with members of other lodges. And I will say this. There was something very special about the day I got that degree, being there in the House of Orange with members from all different lodges, Orangemen from all different lodges, from all over Ontario and beyond. It was beautiful, right? Now let's look at the first point I made here, okay? Moving forward. The early followers of Christ met in secret and used secret symbols. Even before that, Jesus passed along secret knowledge via his parables to his followers, particularly to his disciples. Do you ever notice that? Right? Because he wanted them to have that knowledge, right? He wanted them to have that knowledge. And I will say this, to learn the truths, to break this down into, shall we say, a more faith-based explanation, to learn the truths of any scripture, be it biblical, Quran, Tanakh, Guru Granth Sahib, Bhagavad Gita, etc., the best way to learn is to go to their temple, church, synagogue, house of worship, call it what you want, and study those scriptures, those truths with your brothers and sisters from that particular faith, right? Now, similarly, the esoteric knowledge of any order of any fraternal stripe, to really understand it, you must join, attend, and study with your brethren in that lodge. And before anybody jumps to any conclusions, okay, a lodge, any of these fraternal organizations will be the first person to tell you that they are not a religion, but much like your church family or your family at home, they are a family, right? And they're there to teach you and explain this knowledge to you, right? And I'll close with that. I hope you've enjoyed this particular segment as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. But before I go, I want to remind you that this podcast is available on both YouTube and Spreaker. Please share, like, and subscribe when viewing Points of Light Radio on YouTube. I also welcome your comments and input. You can follow Points of Light Radio on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Points of Light Radio. My Twitter handle is at PO Light Radio. You can see the link to my Spotify channel, as well as my Points of Light Radio store. Brothers and sisters, this has been an enormous pleasure bringing you this particular segment. And until we meet again, just step into the light.